I was asked today to speak about big data and real-time media. So I'm going to do just that. We'll share some insights and some learnings that we've received, as well as show you some real tangible examples of how marketers are successfully using big data and real-time media in their marketing efforts. Quick show of hands, how many of you in the room are familiar with Quantcast? So pretty much everybody, not entirely everybody. So let me just give you a brief overview of what we do. Most of you know us as the world's favorite measurement service, and certainly that was our heritage. But today, Quantcast is a real-time media company, and we're dedicated to making advertising relevant and audiences valuable. We work with publishers, marketers, and their advertising agencies to match the right audience with the right message in the right environment at precisely the right time. We launched in late 2006 with Quantcast Measurement. It's a free direct measurement service. We did that because we felt that the future of digital media, if not the future of all media, and the promise that advertising technology held can only be realized by direct interaction with audiences and interpretation of massive data sets. Today, we process massive amounts of data per day, and we help marketers and agencies get the best performance from their media campaigns through our advertising targeting solutions. $469 billion. That's a big number. That's JP Morgan's estimate for the amount of annual advertising expenditures worldwide. Recently, the IAB had announced that $7.3 billion was spent in online media in the first quarter alone, and it was a healthy 23% increase. So a lot of people would be quite happy with that type of increase. But the reality is that it's still a very small percentage of the overall dollars that are spent in the online channel. So back to this $469 billion number. Just to put that into some perspective, that's roughly about the same amount as the GDP, the country of Poland. And I'm Polish, so of course I would use Poland. But that's an economy of 40 million people. So if you start to look at that number, and you think about what it takes to run an economy of 40 million people, you can start to get a sense of the complexity of efficiently moving dollars from one area to the other. So that's $469 billion annually. How's the money spent? Well, in the online channel, most of the dollars are spent using some type of demographic targeting. And you certainly can get lots of scale. But unfortunately, your performance is limited. Retargeting, conversely, provides you with superior performance. But unfortunately, it doesn't quite scale, and many of us have kind of seen this over the last few years. I mean, it is called retargeting, right? I mean, it's a group of people that we know, and we're kind of re-messaging to those same people. So you're kind of limited in scale. Search brought the capabilities to provide both things. Number one is you could provide great scale, right, and really help marketers scale. The second thing is that it provided superior performance. So the question is, can display and video do the same thing? And that's obviously what we're all here today to learn about. At Quantcast, we clearly think that it is possible, and we think that big data and real-time media will help make this so. So back to some other interesting stats. There today are 400,000 real-time media impressions being traded globally every second. So think about the implication of the shift. For making decisions back in the day, you picked a few magazines, some television networks, maybe a couple of websites, to considering hundreds of thousands of impressions and the advertising opportunities that occur in the blink of an eye. The shift is massive, and that volume is growing significant every month. But here's the gap. In the world of traditional media buying, the world clearly that a lot of us grew up in, the audiences were targeted in aggregate, and you were buying your campaigns on a media property level. We might choose a handful of properties, we'd evaluate them, we'd whittle that down to maybe a smaller number of titles, and the nice thing is we had the luxury of time, right? Remember those days? We had plenty of time to kind of decide how to implement that buy. Well, today, the shift to impression-level buying, we're faced with having to make evaluate billions of impressions on a daily basis, and each decision must be made in milliseconds if we're not to disrupt the consumer's media experience. And there's a lot of new acronyms that are popping up on a regular basis. And, after all, everyone says they've got scale, they've got performance, and they always have the most amount of data, right? But doing this is hard. And I don't mean hard in a trivial sense. The real success relies upon superior capabilities to process enormous amounts of data in real time. And it's like nothing we've ever seen before. So, is your organization set up to handle this? Whether you're a publisher, a marketer, an agency? Are your partners set up to handle this? In a shift to the real-time media world, partners will need to fulfill 4 core capabilities. We refer to these as the rules of engagement. So the first rule of engagement is real-time interconnectivity. The majority of the world's impressions are going to be delivered in real time in a bidded media environment. You might recall the IAB actually at the Mix conference in September of last year, some Google executives had made some predictions that were to come true by the year 2015. One of those predictions was that half of online display ads will be purchased on an audience basis in real time. Today, only a small amount of online display ads are bought in real time. And 2015 is not that far away. But from a buyer's perspective, it means you've got to consider tens, hundreds, tens of thousands of different media properties, right? And you have to tap into those impressions because they could be gone in the blink of an eye. So how are you going to secure the best opportunities? And real-time interconnectivity allows you to do just that. And I don't mean you pick up the phone and make a phone call. I'm talking about technology that can make hundreds of thousands of decisions every second. Number 2, petabyte scale computing. An enormous amount of data is required, and it also requires new processing paradigms and kind of how we think about managing that data. You can't just go and buy a really terrific computer system off the shelf, even if you bought a really expensive computer system. The reality is that it takes a whole new way of thinking, and it takes new architecture that was pioneered by companies like Google. So you have to think about things in a very, very different way. So let's take just a look at kind of this club of people that we call the Petabyte Club, to give you an idea of the complexity of handling this much data. So think about these examples. At a top level, by the way, there's probably about 10 organizations in the world that process petabyte levels of data. And 3 of those you need some type of security badge to get into. But let's think about the ones that you don't. So let's talk about Google. It was reported in 2008 that Google is processing 20 petabytes of data on a daily basis. That was 3 years ago. So imagine what that looks like today. AT&T, it's been reported, is transferring 19 petabytes of data across their network. Apple was recently reported that they purchased 12 petabytes of storage for online video for iTunes. So these are large volumes. We've been around for a little over 4 years, and we're processing 3 petabytes of data a day. So how many non-engineers are there in the room? Let me put it to you this way in terms of kind of the scale. If you took all human recorded information, from stuff that's written on papyrus all the way through history to magazines, newspapers, television shows, film, online videos, you name it. All of that would equal 50 petabytes of data, according to the New York Times. So it gives you a sense of the scale of processing that's required in a real-time media environment. Number 3, machine learning and optimization. So this goes way beyond the realms of human decision making. And a new generation of artificial intelligence is emerging, the so-called machine learning, that is coming to the forefront in our world. In the move to real-time bidding, problems have become so complex. Not only do we need to optimize, but we need to adjust the reach for any type of given campaign. And human just can't do it. It's got to be done by machines. We also have to determine where we might find the most effective media to reach them. So when, it goes well beyond the who, but, when we should do so and how much we might value each impression to get the most value. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this is being done billions of times a day. And finally, it's data. So data is the key to the entire new media economy, right? And every decision is improved by data. And when I say data, I don't just mean a list of cookies. What good is the who without the consideration of the when, the why, and the how much? So think about it. In an online world, digital media is data. So consider these 4 rules of engagement as you evaluate your partners in a real-time world. Your media partners of the future will help you drive performance and scale, be it for an acquisition campaign or even a brand campaign. I think we've seen some examples today of kind of some interesting things that are being done on the brand front as well. So it's not easy to do. These 4 rules of engagement, this is hard stuff to do. And I want you to think about that as you try to think about how you're going to win when you leave this conference today. So this is great. How do we make it actionable? Well, I want to share a couple of examples to try and illustrate the point. So the first example is from the online travel category. So needless to say, the travel category is a highly competitive space. Profitable customer acquisition is really being challenged with paid search because increasingly it's getting tapped out. Travel marketers are hungry for alternatives and ways that they can expand their online bookings. They have to continue to grow, obviously, to meet their business objectives. So a leading hotelier had experimented with a variety of techniques, including contextual and behavioral display advertising, only to find that the CPA, cost per acquisition metric, really wasn't working the way they needed it to work. So they asked us to actually go look for converters. So to go well beyond clickers and literally put heads in beds. So the approach that we took was we created custom models of their best customers. So we mapped out their site, and there were certain areas of the site that they found would drive the most value to their business. And so we made sure that we were able to understand what that particular user segment might look like. Obviously, these were people that recently booked a hotel room in this example. And what we did was we leveraged our machine learning to match the custom models. And these were, again, built off the attributes of their best customers. And then what we did is we took those attributes and we went out in a real-time environment and we looked for millions of people that looked just like their best customer. So helping them drive a much greater return. And in fact, during the campaign period, we were able to double the bookings that they had in terms of the objective. So really driving value in a real-time environment. Second example is a retail example, and this is a national retailer. And the national retailer was looking to drive more interest actually in store for specific brands. So they needed a solution that was going to help them. They sell a lot of stuff, obviously, but they needed a solution that was going to help them get understanding of their customers for a variety of brands, all at the same time. They also had really deep relationships with premium publishers. And so they wanted to figure out how they could make those relationships, drive more value from those relationships. So the approach that was taken was to build custom audiences for several of their brands. So brands that they were looking for was a line of maternity clothing, a line of fashion clothing for a specific audience segment for women. They had a sportswear line that they wanted to get more traffic, in-store traffic on. And they also had a grocery product that they wanted to promote in the marketplace. So all these things are elements that they wanted to promote. So again, what our solution was to leverage the machine learning to differentiate the different audience goals and also take into account things like seasonality in order to help them drive their business. And the beautiful thing about the solution was that the marketer, the national retailer, was also able to take those segments and bring those to their publishers. And the premium publishers were able to enhance the existing brand and sponsorship offerings that they had with the national retailer. Simultaneously, Quantcast was able to look for customers that look like their best customers in those individual segments and go find them in a real-time environment. The end result, as you can see here, close to 2,000% return on ad spend that was attributed to this initiative. So how did both of these cases leverage the 4 rules of engagement? Well, both required real-time interconnectivity, including the evaluation and purchase of billions of impressions. It also was made possible by our technologic infrastructure that supports massive data processing, machine learning, and optimization. So, big data and real-time media. So the shift to real-time media is happening. Are you ready? Are you prepared to make the investments in personnel, in technology, and all of those things that are going to help you benefit in a real-time media environment? Second, working in a real-time environment is hard. It requires new skills and capabilities, unlike what you're used to. And finally, understanding the rules of engagement is key. All the 4 elements in these rules of engagement I mentioned exist. The question is, are you working with partners who can bring all of these elements together holistically and make them work for you? So the future of media is big data and real-time media. So are you ready? So with the prepared remarks, I was just going to open it up to questions. Great. And I'm not sure if there's microphones or, Lisa, do we have mics at all? Or? Okay. It's kind of a big room, so great. Great. Question? Sure. So the question was, can I talk a little bit more about the key learning and how it applies in a real-time environment? What I mentioned before was that most of the ways marketers were thinking about things is not in a real-time environment. They're thinking about individual properties, and they're thinking about buying titles, buying programming, buying sites, kind of in an aggregate level. But when you kind of break that down at an impression level buy, you've got to, as I mentioned earlier, you've got to think about things in a very, very different way. And so when you look at the example of the travel customer, and you look at the example of a retail customer, it required us to really sit down with them and say, let's look at this at a kind of an impression-based level and take a look at and project out what type of results you're trying to get and how we can help you get there. And the technique that we use is called, we call them Quantcast lookalikes. So we are deploying technology on the marketer's site, as I mentioned earlier, in specific areas that are indications of specific actions they want taken. They booked a room, they just bought this sportswear line, something along those lines. And then we take a couple of days and we observe the traffic that's coming in, and then we aggregate those learnings so that we can understand what is the profile of their best customer. And then, instead of saying, okay, now let me go buy a specific network television program or something along those lines, let me go out and let me find those people in an exchange environment in real time. And then, as we get key learnings, let me go ahead and optimize to those. And so that's how we were applying kind of key learnings, kind of through the entire process to help this customer, drive the type of business results that their company is demanding of them. Great. Any other questions? And there is a microphone. Great. Well, with that, I'll thank all of you for attending the workshop today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks.